Behind the perfect lawns and friendly waves, what sinister secrets fester in the heart of suburbia? Welcome, dear neighbor, to Nightmare True Horror. Tonight, we peel back the idyllic veneer to reveal 7 true tales where white picket fences hide horrifying truths. What unsettling whispers have you overheard in your own quiet cul-de-sac? Share your neighborhood nightmares in the comments, and if you dare to confront the darkness lurking just beyond your trimmed hedges, subscribe. The welcome mat is out, but remember, the most terrifying monsters are often the ones who smile and offer you a cup of sugar right before the chilling climax unfolds. When I first moved to Sunny Acres, I thought I'd hit the suburban jackpot. White picket fences, freshly mowed lawns, kids laughing as they rode bikes down tree-lined streets, like something straight out of a magazine. Being 32, single and working remotely, I figured this place would give me peace, quiet, and maybe some friendly neighbors to keep the loneliness at bay. At first, the neighborhood group chat seemed perfect. Sunny Acres Neighbors, they called it. A friendly mix of lost pet notices, yard sale alerts, and block party invitations. Carol from 2 doors down posted cupcake recipes. Jim across the street joked about squirrels stealing his tomatoes. Harmless stuff. But soon after, the vibe changed. It began subtly, almost too subtle to notice at first. One day, someone anonymously posted, "Did anyone else see that strange van parked near the park today?" Harmless enough, right? But then came the responses. "Yeah, suspicious. We should keep an eye out. Definitely doesn't belong here." And then someone else added ominously, "We have to keep Sunny Acres safe and pure." The phrasing stuck with me. Strangely aggressive, but I shrugged it off. Maybe they'd had past problems with crime or something. Suburbia had its quirks, after all. A few days later, another message popped up, this time targeting a specific neighbor named Maria Lopez. Maria had moved here with her husband Carlos and their young son just weeks before I did. The message read, "Has anyone noticed Maria Lopez acting strange? She's always walking around late at night, looking into people's yards. Just saying, we should watch her." That message felt off. Maria seemed nice enough when we chatted briefly at the mailbox. Quiet, a little shy. I couldn't picture her snooping through yards at midnight. But suspicion spread like wildfire. Soon, neighbors were chiming in with vague accusations. "I saw her staring into my house last night. Creepy. Do we even know where she came from? Background checks aren't mandatory here." Then a message appeared one evening, colder, harsher. "Sunny Acres needs to stay safe. We might need to take matters into our own hands." My stomach churned. I messaged privately to Carol, "The cupcake lady. Is this normal?" She replied instantly, almost dismissively, "People get a little protective here. It's harmless venting. Don't worry." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was bubbling beneath Sunny Acres' shiny exterior. That night, I stayed awake late, nervously glancing out my window toward Mariah's house. It was nearly midnight when I noticed movement. 3 shadowy figures crossing the street, pausing briefly outside Mariah's house. My breath caught. They stood silently, whispering among themselves. After a few tense minutes, they moved on, melting back into darkness. Sleep didn't come easily after that. The next morning, Maria was outside, frantically scrubbing bright red graffiti off her white picket fence. Large, jagged letters spelled, "Leave." My gut tightened, realizing those shadowy figures last night weren't just passing through. In the group chat, someone had posted smugly, message sent loud and clear. Fear knotted inside me. I wanted to speak up, to defend Maria, but I didn't. Shame burned my throat. I stayed silent, afraid to be targeted myself. 2 days later, a new thread popped up. Notice, suspicious behavior from newcomer Chris Randall. My blood froze. Chris Randall, that's me. He's always watching us from his windows. Someone wrote, "Why?" My heart pounded as others piled on with accusations. Someone claimed they'd seen me lurking suspiciously at night. Another posted, "Does anyone know his history? We need to keep Sunny Acres pure." Paranoia surged. Suddenly, the friendly faces I'd seen every day seemed menacing. A subtle nod, a lingering glance. They all felt sinister now. That night, sleep was impossible. Every noise outside, the rustle of leaves, footsteps on pavement, spiked my adrenaline. Around midnight, headlights slowly swept past my house, lingering just a moment too long. I rushed to the window. Across the street, 3 figures stood motionless, staring directly at me. A dull thump against my front door made me jump violently. Running downstairs, I found an envelope taped there. Inside, a single piece of paper read in bold red marker, "You don't belong here. Leave." Fear exploded inside me. Was this what Maria had experienced? Panic consumed me. I called the police, voice shaking, recounting everything. But they sounded skeptical, saying they'd check it out tomorrow. Neighborhood drama, they called it. I spent the next hour pacing, anxiety climbing higher with each passing minute. Then a sharp crack echoed. My back door forced open. Panic surged as footsteps shuffled through my kitchen. They were inside. I bolted upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom. Frantically, I dialed 911 again, whispering urgently, barely breathing. "Please hurry. They're inside." Boots thumped heavily up the stairs, slow and deliberate. The knob rattled violently. A muffled voice growled, "We warned you." I pressed against the door, heart racing, helpless. Then sirens wailed outside. Blue lights flashed. Voices shouted commands. I heard footsteps fleeing downstairs, crashing, then silence. Police found my house ransacked. Hateful messages spray-painted across my walls. 3 neighbors, men I'd seen regularly at community barbecues, were arrested later that night. Authorities revealed they'd targeted multiple residents over the years, driving out anyone they deemed outsiders. A twisted vision of purity. Sunny Acres was never the peaceful paradise I'd imagined. Beneath friendly smiles and neatly trimmed lawns hid something hateful, predatory. I moved away quickly afterward, yet paranoia still lingers. Trusting neighbors feels impossible now. Every community chat notification triggers dread. Dread. Sometimes late at night, lying awake, I picture shadowy figures standing outside, patiently watching. Because Sunny Acres taught me a chilling lesson. The scariest monsters don't lurk in dark forests or abandoned buildings. Sometimes they smile at you over white picket fences. The night air in suburban Indiana was thick with cricket song, but the house at 213 Willow Lane stood silent, its porch light dead. I'd moved into the rental next door 2 weeks ago, a fresh start at 30 after quitting my call center job in Indy. The new place was a cozy split level, perfect for my late night baking hobby, but 213 gave me the creeps. Neighbors called it bank-owned, their eyes sliding away when I asked why it sat empty. My first night, I caught the curtains twitching, and every midnight since, the swing set in its backyard whined. Creak, creak, creak. No wind, just that relentless rhythm, pulling me to the window, my insomnia a faithful friend. I clutched my coffee mug, the steam curling under my nose, and stared at 213's yard. The tire swing hung from rusted chains, swaying slightly, though the air was still. My notebook lay open, scribbled with times. 12:03 a.m., 12:17 a.m., each creak precise, like a metronome. I told myself it was loose bolts, old metal, but my skin prickled, like eyes were watching back. Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor with a rose garden obsession, caught me staring at dawn. Kids played there, she muttered, her hose blasting the pavement. Before the accident, her door slammed before I could ask more. The word accident stuck like a burr. I texted my friend Kara, a librarian who loved digging into local history. Heard anything about 213 Willow Lane? Her reply was quick. Checking. Neighbors are cagey. Stay safe, Leah. I brushed it off, blaming my sleepless nights. But at noon, I found footprints in the dew. Small, child-sized, trailing from the swing to my trash cans. Inside, a Barbie doll, its eyes gouged out, plastic face smeared with dirt. My heart thudded. I snapped a photo and posted to the neighborhood watch group. Anyone lose a doll? The replies flooded in, sharp and cold. Not funny. Drop it. The admin locked the thread. I called Kara, voice low, the doll in a Ziploc bag. She'd found a police report from 9. The Hendersons, last owners of 213, vanished. Parents and 3 kids. No foul play, the report claimed. The case photos showed backpacks on the swing, lined up, evenly spaced, like an offering. My stomach twisted. Reason said they'd skipped town, maybe debts. but intuition screamed worse. That night, the swing's creak was faster, chains rattling like bones. I peered out, my ring cam's light casting shadows under the tire. Too still, too solid for trees. A whisper drifted through my cracked window, soft, chilling. "Come play." I slammed it shut, heart racing, and checked the cam feed. Nothing, just the swing, swaying alone. I told myself it was kids, a prank, but my hands shook as I locked every door. At 2 a.m., a thump hit my porch sharp, like something dropped. My flashlight beam caught a toy truck, its wheels spinning, placed dead center. No footprints, no tracks, just the swing's creak in the distance, now uneven, urgent. Kara came over the next day, her laptop open to old news clips. The Hendersons were normal, she said, scrolling. Churchgoers, PEA. Then poof, gone. She found a forum post from a retired cop. Something off about that house. Sheriff buried it. We drove to the library, digging through microfiche, finding an 8 photo of Mr. Henderson pushing the swing. His smile tight, eyes darting to something off frame. My pulse spiked. Back home, the swing was still, but my trash cans were tipped. Another doll inside, this one with my hair color, eyes scratched out. I cut through 213's yard that night, stupid but driven, knife in my pocket. The back door was ajar, the air inside heavy with mildew and a coppery tang. My flashlight flickered, catching cobwebs and cracked linoleum. Upstairs, the nursery's wallpaper peeled in strips, tiny handprints smearing the closet door, red-brown like rust. Inside, a camcorder labeled Birthday 2008. My hands shook as I hit play. The tape whirred, showing kids laughing, the swing creaking, then Henderson's face, pale, as a shadow loomed behind the camera. Not human, too tall, too wrong. A scream cut off, the screen going black. A snap shook the house. Chains outside rattling violently. Glass shattered downstairs. I ran, tripping on the stairs, my flashlight dying. The back door hung open, the swing now tangled, one chain broken. I stumbled to the curb, dialing 911, my voice a mess. Sheriff Lowry arrived, his boots heavy, flashlight sweeping. "Squatting's illegal, Ms. Reed," he said, crushing the camcorder underfoot. "Henderson's left town. Case closed." But his knuckles were white, his radio crackling. "Check the old tracks." The sheriff's team found nothing. No dolls, no handprints. The house swept clean. They called it vandalism. Blame teens. Kara dug deeper, finding missing persons linked to Willow Lane. All near 9, all unreported. The Henderson's case was buried, Lowry's signature on every report. He wasn't just covering up. He was part of it, protecting someone, or something, that took families. His motive a mix of fear and complicity, keeping the town's secret to save his own skin. I moved to Fort Wayne, a new apartment, no swings. But last night, my ring cam pinged at 2:07 a.m., showing 213's yard. Impossible. Miles away, a man in a Henderson high jacket, leading a child-sized figure, its face blurred. The figure turned, waving a Barbie arm, its eyes scratched out. I checked my locks. Keep a bat by the bed. But every creak, every shadow, feels like that swing. Its chains still moving, calling me to play. The city's hum can't drown the creak in my head. The city's hum can't drown the creak in my head. I'm safe, they say. But Lowry's out there. Or something worse. Its handprints on my door, waiting for me to step back to Willow Lane. When I first moved to Sunny Acres, I thought I'd hit the suburban jackpot. White picket fences, freshly mowed lawns, kids laughing as they rode bikes down tree-lined streets, like something straight out of a magazine. Being 32, single and working remotely, I figured this place would give me peace, quiet, and maybe some friendly neighbors to keep the loneliness at bay. At first, the neighborhood group chat seemed perfect. Sunny Acres Neighbors, they called it. A friendly mix of lost pet notices, yard sale alerts, and block party invitations. Carol from 2 doors down posted cupcake recipes. Jim across the street joked about squirrels stealing his tomatoes. Harmless stuff. But soon after, the vibe changed. It began subtly, almost too subtle to notice at first. One day, someone anonymously posted, "Did anyone else see that strange van parked near the park today?" Harmless enough, right? But then came the responses. "Yeah, suspicious. We should keep an eye out. Definitely doesn't belong here." And then someone else added ominously, "We have to keep Sunny Acres safe and pure." The phrasing stuck with me. Strangely aggressive, but I shrugged it off. Maybe they'd had past problems with crime or something. Suburbia had its quirks, after all. A few days later, another message popped up, this time targeting a specific neighbor named Maria Lopez. Maria had moved here with her husband Carlos and their young son just weeks before I did. The message read, "Has anyone noticed Maria Lopez acting strange? She's always walking around late at night, looking into people's yards. Just saying, we should watch her." That message felt off. Maria seemed nice enough when we chatted briefly at the mailbox. Quiet, a little shy. I couldn't picture her snooping through yards at midnight. But suspicion spread like wildfire. Soon, neighbors were chiming in with vague accusations. "I saw her staring into my house last night. Creepy. Do we even know where she came from?" Background checks aren't mandatory here. Then a message appeared one evening. Colder. Harsher. Sunny Acres needs to stay safe. We might need to take matters into our own hands. My stomach churned. I messaged privately to Carol, the cupcake lady. "Is this normal?" She replied instantly, almost dismissively. "People get a little protective here. It's harmless venting. Don't worry." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was bubbling beneath Sunny Acres' shiny exterior. That night, I stayed awake late, nervously glancing out my window toward Maria's house. It was nearly midnight when I noticed movement. 3 shadowy figures crossing the street, pausing briefly outside Maria's house. My breath caught. They stood silently, whispering among themselves. After a few tense minutes, they moved on, melting back into darkness. Sleep didn't come easily after that. The next morning, Maria was outside, frantically scrubbing bright red graffiti off her white picket fence. Large, jagged letters spelled, "Leave." My gut tightened, realizing those shadowy figures last night weren't just passing through. In the group chat, someone had posted smugly. Message sent loud and clear. Fear knotted inside me. I wanted to speak up, to defend Maria, but I didn't. Shame burned my throat. I stayed silent, afraid to be targeted myself. 2 days later, a new thread popped up. Notice: suspicious behavior from newcomer Chris Randall. My blood froze. Chris Randall, that's me. He's always watching us from his windows. Someone wrote, "Why?" My heart pounded as others piled on with accusations. Someone claimed they'd seen me lurking suspiciously at night. Another posted, "Does anyone know his history? We need to keep Sunny Acres pure." Paranoia surged. Suddenly, the friendly faces I'd seen every day seemed menacing. A subtle nod, a lingering glance. They all felt sinister now. That night, sleep was impossible. Every noise outside, the rustle of leaves, footsteps on pavement, spiked my adrenaline. Around midnight, headlights slowly swept past my house, lingering just a moment too long. I rushed to the window. Across the street, 3 figures stood motionless, staring directly at me. A dull thump against my front door made me jump violently. Running downstairs, I found an envelope taped there. Inside, a single piece of paper read in bold red marker, "You don't belong here. Leave." Fear exploded inside me. Was this what Maria had experienced? Panic consumed me. I called the police, voice shaking, recounting everything. But they sounded skeptical, saying they'd check it out tomorrow. Neighborhood drama, they called it. I spent the next hour pacing, anxiety climbing higher with each passing minute. Then, a sharp crack echoed. My back door, forced open. Panic surged as footsteps shuffled through my kitchen. They were inside. I bolted upstairs, locking myself in my bedroom. Frantically, I dialed 911 again, whispering urgently, barely breathing, "Please hurry." There aside, boots thumped heavily up the stairs, slow and deliberate. The knob rattled violently. A muffled voice growled, "We warned you." I pressed against the door, heart racing, helpless. Then sirens wailed outside, Blue lights flashed, voices shouted commands. I heard footsteps fleeing downstairs, crashing, then silence. Police found my house ransacked. Hateful messages spray-painted across my walls. 3 neighbors, men I'd seen regularly at community barbecues, were arrested later that night. Authorities revealed they'd targeted multiple residents over the years, driving out anyone they deemed outsiders. A twisted vision of purity. Sunny Acres was never the peaceful paradise I'd imagined. Beneath friendly smiles and neatly trimmed lawns hid something hateful, predatory. I moved away quickly afterward, yet paranoia still lingers. Trusting neighbors feels impossible now. Every community chat notification triggers dread. Sometimes late at night, lying awake, I picture shadowy figures standing outside, patiently watching. Because Sunny Acres taught me a chilling lesson. The scariest monsters don't lurk in dark forests or abandoned buildings. Sometimes they smile at you over white picket fences. My name's Karen, and Green Willow Park used to be my happy place. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so most days I'd pack up my laptop and sketchpad and head there for a few hours of fresh air and inspiration. It's your typical suburban oasis, sprawling lawns, ancient oak trees, a playground usually echoing with kids' laughter. Safe, familiar, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those perfect early fall days. I was on my favorite bench, sketching the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, when a small voice piped up. "Excuse me." I looked down. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, stood there, clutching a worn-looking teddy bear. She had big, serious blue eyes and pigtails the color of corn silk. She looked utterly lost. "I can't find my mommy and daddy," she said, her lower lip trembling just a bit. My heart went out to her. "Oh, sweetie, don't worry. We'll find them," I said, putting my sketchbook aside. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "And my teddy is Barnaby." "Okay, Lily and Barnaby," I smiled. "I'm Karen. Let's go look for your parents, shall we?" She nodded, her eyes still wide. Then she said, "Thank you, Karen. You're nice. Mommy said you would be." I froze. "Your mommy said I'd be nice. How could her mother know me? Maybe she'd seen me in the park before. It was a small town." Lily just nodded again. "She said you live in the yellow house with the squeaky porch swing, and your cat, Patches, likes to chase butterflies in your front yard." A cold wave washed over me. My house was yellow. My porch swing did squeak. A constant annoyance I kept meaning to oil. And Patches loved chasing butterflies. These weren't details anyone could know just by passing by. This wasn't a lost child stumbling upon a kind stranger. This felt targeted. My initial sympathy was rapidly being replaced by a prickling unease. "Where did you last see your parents, Lily?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, casual. She pointed towards a more secluded part of the park, near the dense woods that bordered the nature trail, over by the big twisty tree. Every instinct screamed at me to grab Lily, find a park ranger, call the police, but she looked so small, so vulnerable. And what if I was overreacting? What if her parents were genuinely just a few steps away? Frantic. Against my better judgment, I let her take my hand, her tiny fingers surprisingly strong. As we walked towards the twisty tree, the cheerful sounds of the playground faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant caw of a crow. The air grew cooler. Lily was quiet. Her earlier distress seemingly vanished, replaced by a strange, almost unnerving calm. Then, 2 figures emerged from the shadows of the woods, a man and a woman, both in their late 30s or early 40s, dressed in neat, slightly old-fashioned clothes. They looked like a perfectly ordinary suburban couple, except for their eyes. Their eyes were cold, watchful, and as they focused on me, their smiles didn't quite reach them. "Oh, Lily, there you are," the woman exclaimed, her voice a little too bright, a little too rehearsed. "We were so worried." Thank you so much for finding her," she said, turning to me, her gaze intense. "She's a brave little girl," the man added, his voice flat. He put a hand on Lily's shoulder, but it looked less like a comforting gesture and more like he was keeping her in place. "She told me you knew my name, and about my house," I said, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. The woman's smile tightened. "Oh, Lily has such an imagination. And this town is so small, dear. Everyone knows everyone, eventually." It wasn't an explanation. It was a dismissal. They took Lily's hands, thanked me again with that same unnerving, superficial politeness, and then led her away, disappearing back towards the main park area. I stood there, under the shadow of the twisty tree, a profound sense of wrongness settling deep in my bones. The encounter felt staged, a performance for my benefit. But why? Over the next few days, the unease lingered, growing into a low hum of anxiety. I felt watched. I had catch glimpses of a nondescript dark sedan, similar to one I vaguely remembered seeing near the park, parked down the street from my house, always pulling away if I looked too long. Once I saw Lily, standing across the street, just staring at my yellow house, Barnaby clutched in her arms. When she saw me notice her, she didn't wave or smile. She just turned and walked away. Then the drawing appeared on my porch, a child's crayon picture of a yellow house, a stick figure with my messy brown hair, and a smaller stick figure, Lily, holding its hand. They were standing under a big, twisty tree. On the back, in blocky, childish letters, it said, "Lily misses you. Come play. Twisty tree. Sundown." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a child's innocent invitation. This was a summons, a lure. My rational mind screamed at me to call the police, to stay away. But a darker, more desperate part of me needed to understand, to confront whatever this was. I told my friend Sarah where I was going, a small precaution that felt utterly inadequate. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, I walked towards the twisty tree in Green Willow Park. The playground was empty now, the swings swaying gently in the evening breeze. Lily was there, sitting at the base of the tree, Barnaby beside her. She looked up as I approached, her blue eyes unreadable. "You came," she said, her voice flat. "Lily, what is this about?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Mommy and Daddy said you'd understand," she replied, just as the parents stepped out from behind the tree. Their smiles were gone. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold and predatory. "Welcome back, Karen," the woman said, her voice no longer bright, but chillingly calm. "Lily has taken quite a shine to you. We've all been watching you. You fit the profile perfectly." "Profile? What profile?" I demanded, backing away. Our community," the man said, taking a step towards me. "We're always looking for new members. People who appreciate a different way of life, a more dedicated family." He gestured vaguely towards the dark woods. "Lily needs a new sister, a permanent one." The implication was horrifying. They weren't just eccentric. They were recruiters for something far more sinister, using their child as bait. They began to close in, their movements slow, deliberate, like wolves cornering prey. I didn't scream. There was no one to hear. I did the only thing I could think of. I threw my heavy sketch pad at the man's face. A desperate, clumsy attack, then turned and ran. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, not towards the park exit, but deeper into the residential streets bordering the park, hoping for lights, for witnesses. I could hear them behind me for a short while, their footsteps surprisingly quick, but then they seemed to melt back into the suburban twilight. I made it home, locked the doors, called the police. I told them everything. The child, the parents, the drawing, the confrontation. They took a report, patrolled the park, but the family, Lily, her parents, their nondescript sedan, was gone. Vanished as if they'd never been there. The house Lily had pointed out as hers in the park, it was vacant, had been for months. The police found no trace, no evidence beyond my frantic story and the crude crayon drawing. I moved out of the yellow house with the squeaky porch swing a week later. Green Willow Park is no longer my happy place. It's a place of shadows, of chilling possibilities. I still see Lily's face in my nightmares, her serious blue eyes, her innocent smile that masked such a terrifying purpose. I don't know who they were or what community they served, but I know their welcome was a carefully laid trap, and I can't help but wonder how many other lost children are out there, in ordinary suburban parks, waiting to lead unsuspecting strangers down a path from which they might never return. I'm 29, a high school English teacher, and I just moved to a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The neighborhood was textbook American. Neat lawns, white picket fences, kids on bikes. I'd been saving for years to buy my first house. A modest 2-bedroom with a creaky porch and a big oak in the yard. The move felt like a fresh start after a rough breakup. But the day I unpacked, I found a note taped to my front door. "Welcome to the neighborhood." In cheery cursive, signed, "The Residents." It was sweet, I thought, until I held it up to the kitchen light. Scrawled on the back, in faint, glowing ink, was one word: run. My stomach twisted as I stared at the word, the fluorescent bulb casting a sickly glow. It had to be a prank, right? Kids messing around with invisible ink pens. I laughed it off, but my hands shook as I set the note on the counter. The house felt too quiet now, the hum of the fridge unnaturally loud. I double-checked the locks, my sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. That night, I couldn't sleep. The oak tree's branches scraped the roof like fingernails on a chalkboard. Around 2 a.m., a faint tap came from the front door. My heart lurched. I crept to the living room, peering through the blinds. The street was empty, bathed in the orange glow of streetlights. But a shadow flickered at the edge of my yard, too tall to be a kid. I held my breath, waiting. The tapping stopped, but a soft creak came from the back door. I grabbed a flashlight and a kitchen knife, my pulse hammering in my ears. The back door was locked, but a fresh scratch marked the frame, like someone had tried prying it open. I swept the flashlight across the backyard. Nothing but grass and shadows. Then a glint caught my eye. A second note, tucked under a rock by the porch. Same cheery cursive: "We're watching." My mouth went dry. I didn't touch it. The next morning, I knocked on my neighbor's door. A guy named Tom, mid-40s. A mechanic with a friendly nod. I showed him the first note, mentioned the word on the back. His smile faltered, eyes darting to the street. "Probably just kids," he said, too quickly. "This is a safe place." But his hands fidgeted, and he wouldn't meet my gaze. I left, unease curling in my gut. That afternoon, I noticed things off in the house. A drawer slightly ajar. A coffee mug moved from the sink to the table. I told myself I was paranoid, but my skin prickled every time I passed the windows. By dusk, the street felt too still, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a low hum like a car idling, coming from the alley behind my house. I peeked through the blinds. A dark van sat in the alley. No plates, its engine rumbling softly. My chest tightened. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when the van's headlights flicked on, blinding me. It peeled out, tires screeching. I stood frozen, the knife still in my hand, my breath shallow. Another note was taped to the back door. "You should have run." I called the cops. They came, took the notes, and said they'd patrol the area. No prints, no leads. Could be a prank, the officer said, but his eyes lingered on the scratch marks. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every gust of wind sounded like footsteps circling the house. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Look under the porch." My blood ran cold. I didn't want to look, but my feet moved anyway, driven by some sick need to know. I grabbed the flashlight and crawled under the porch, the damp earth cold against my knees. The beam caught a plastic bag, half buried inside, a rusted knife, a woman's scarf, and a photo of a family I didn't recognize, their faces scratched out. My hands trembled as I backed out, dirt smearing my clothes. I called the cops again. They took the bag, asked questions, but found nothing else. The officer mentioned missing person cases in the area, old ones, unsolved. Could be unrelated, he said, but his voice was tight. I started packing, my hands shaking so bad I dropped a glass. It shattered, the sound echoing like a gunshot. That night I barricaded the front door with a chair. I sat on the couch, knife in hand, eyes on the windows. Around midnight, the power cut out. The house plunged into darkness, the silence deafening. Then, a faint scratching came from the attic. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging a blade across wood. My heart pounded so hard, I felt it in my throat. I grabbed my car keys and bolted for the door, but the chair wouldn't budge, like something was holding it. The scratching stopped, replaced by footsteps descending the attic stairs. Heavy, unhurried. I yanked the chair away, my hands slick with sweat, and flung the door open. A figure stood on the porch, face hidden in shadow, holding another note. I screamed, sprinting past them to my car. I drove straight to a motel, my hands shaking on the wheel. The cops searched my house the next day. They found an attic crawlspace rigged with cameras, wires leading to a recorder. The notes, the bag, the scratches, they were part of a game. The bag, the scratches, they were part of a game. Someone, maybe Tom, maybe a whole group, had been watching, terrorizing newcomers for years. The cops found similar cases in nearby towns, always targeting single women, always ending with a disappearance or a move. I'm in a new city now, renting a high-rise apartment with a doorman. But I don't sleep. Every note in my mailbox, every shadow in the hall, makes my heart race. I burned the last note, but I can still see it. We know where you are. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they do it, but I know they're still out there, waiting for the next new neighbor. My name is Tom, my wife Sarah, and I bought our little house on Willow Creek Lane 3 years ago. It's a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place where kids leave their bikes on the lawn and neighbors wave from their porches, or at least it used to feel that way. Our house is at the very end, right where the street curves and the storm drain. A wide, unassuming metal grate. Sits ready to swallow whatever the heavens throw down. Usually that's just rainwater and a few autumn leaves. Until last Tuesday, we'd had a week of relentless biblical rain. The kind that drums on the roof so loud you can't hear yourself think. The kind that turns lawns into swamps and streets into shallow rivers. When it finally stopped, the cul-de-sac was a mess. Debris everywhere, and our storm drain, the one at the bottom of the slight slope of Willow Creek Lane, was completely blocked. Water was pooling, a murky brown lake creeping up towards Mr. Henderson's prize-winning petunias. Being the youngest guy on the block and working from home as a freelance writer, I figured it was my civic duty to take a look. Sarah was at work. I pulled on my old rain boots, grabbed a garden rake and a heavy-duty trash bag, and headed out. The air was thick, steamy. The world still dripping. At first, clearing the grate was just a messy, unpleasant job. A thick mat of sodden leaves, twigs, plastic bags. A deflated soccer ball, the usual suburban detritus. I raked it into piles, grumbling. Then my rake snagged on something softer, heavier. I pulled. It was a piece of fabric, tattered and dark, almost black with grime and water. Looked like part of a shirt, maybe. I tossed it aside. Didn't think much of it. Kids lose clothes. I kept digging. More leaves, more muck, then another piece of fabric. This one was smaller, a faded floral pattern, like something from a child's dress. A little knot of unease tightened in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Old rags. People throw all sorts of junk out. But as I pulled out a clump of matted grass and mud, I saw it. A shoe. A single, small, muddy sneaker. The kind a toddler might wear. One lace was missing. My hand holding the rake froze. That wasn't just a lost item. That felt wrong. That's when I first noticed the smell, faint at first, under the earthy scent of wet soil and decaying leaves. A sharp, metallic tang, coppery, like old pennies or something else. I sniffed the air, probably just rust from the grate, I reasoned, or some fertilizer washed down from someone's garden. But the smell, once noticed, seemed to cling to the back of my throat. I glanced up the street. Mrs. Peterson, from 3 houses down, was standing on her porch, arms crossed, just watching me. When our eyes met, she didn't smile or wave. She just stared for a moment, then quickly turned and went inside. Weird. She was usually so chatty. I went back to work, trying to ignore the growing unease. The blockage was deep. I pulled out a sodden, shapeless lump that turned out to be a stuffed animal. A rabbit, its fur matted, one button eye missing. It looked like it had been through a war. The coppery smell was stronger now, unmistakable. It wasn't rust. My stomach churned. I remembered vaguely seeing a missing cat poster on a lamppost a few weeks back. Maybe that was it. Awful, but explainable. Then, my rake hit something solid. wedged deep. I had to get on my hands and knees, reaching into the cold, slimy muck. My fingers closed around something hard, cylindrical. I pulled. It was a length of what looked like PVC pipe, about 2 feet long, capped at both ends. But one cap was loose. As I turned it over, the cap fell off, and something dark and viscous, mixed with water, spilled onto the concrete, and with it a small, tarnished silver locket shaped like a heart. The metallic smell was overwhelming now. It was blood. There was no denying it. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a lost cat. This wasn't old rags. This was something else. Something terrible. The locket lay there, winking dully in the gray light. I felt a desperate urge to pry it open, and an equally strong urge to run. My gaze was drawn back to the grate. The blockage was almost clear. I could see down into the dark maw of the drain pipe. And there, just visible in the shadows, caught on a protruding piece of rebar, was a larger bundle of fabric. Dark, like the first piece I'd pulled out, but this was bigger, more substantial, and there was something sticking out of it. Something pale and slender. I didn't want to look. I knew I had to. With a shaking hand, I reached down with the rake, gently prodding the bundle. It shifted, and a human hand, small and pale, fingers curled, emerged from the sodden fabric. I recoiled, scrambling backwards, a strangled cry escaping my lips. My mind refused to process it for a second. Then the horror crashed down. A hand in my storm drain, on my quiet suburban cul-de-sac. I don't remember getting my phone out. I don't remember dialing 911. But suddenly, I was talking to a dispatcher, my voice a choked, incoherent babble. Willow Creek Lane. Storm drain. There's a hand. The next few hours were a blur of sirens, flashing lights, grim-faced police officers, and yellow tape. Our cul-de-sac, our quiet haven, was a crime scene. They pulled more from that drain. More than I ever wanted to know. The source, they determined, had to be further up the street. One of the houses that lined Willow Creek Lane. One of my neighbors. The investigation is ongoing. No arrests have been made yet, but the questions hang heavy in the air, as thick and cloying as that coppery smell. Who was it? Why? And how could something so monstrous happen on our quiet, ordinary street, hidden beneath our feet, washed down with the rain? Willow Creek Lane isn't the same. The kids don't leave their bikes on the lawns anymore. Neighbors still wave, but there's a new, unspoken tension in the air, a shared, silent horror. Every time it rains hard, I find myself staring at that storm drain, my stomach clenching, wondering what secrets the water might bring forth next. Because I know now that the most terrifying things aren't always in distant, shadowy places. Sometimes they're right under your nose, at the end of your street, waiting for the rain to wash them into the light. It started with Mrs. Peterson's tabby cat. The old woman had plastered the neighborhood with missing posters, her trembling hands pinning them to every telephone pole and community bulletin board. I'd see her shuffling down the sidewalk in her robe at dawn, calling Marmalade in a voice that grew more desperate each day. By a week's end, she'd stopped looking. That was in June. By mid-July, 7 pets had disappeared from our quiet suburban street. I live at 418 Maple Lane, a cookie-cutter neighborhood where most houses look nearly identical, except for the one directly across from mine. The Murphy property stood out like a rotting tooth in an otherwise perfect smile. The grass grew wild and unkempt, reaching past the knees in some places. The siding had faded to a sickly gray, and the porch sagged on one side like it was slowly melting into the earth. Eric Murphy had inherited the place when his mother died 3 years ago. He kept to himself, which suited the neighborhood just fine. I'd only ever exchanged brief nods with him when our paths crossed, which wasn't often since he worked nights. Sometimes I'd spot him arriving home just as I was leaving for work, his pale face barely visible behind the wheel of his rusted Buick. I might never have given him a second thought, if not for what happened with my dog, Rusty. "You let him out before bed?" my wife Lisa asked that night, looking up from her book. Yeah, about 20 minutes ago. He hasn't scratched to come in yet. That's weird. He never stays out this long. I opened the back door and called for him. When silence answered, I grabbed a flashlight and walked the perimeter of our fenced yard. No sign of Rusty. The gate was still latched. He must have dug under the fence again, I said when I came back inside. But a quick check revealed no fresh holes. As I stood in the kitchen, puzzling over this, movement across the street caught my eye. Eric Murphy was outside at nearly midnight, placing something on his front porch. Even from this distance, I could see they were shallow bowls. He arranged them carefully before retreating inside. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I tossed and turned, imagining Rusty lost and frightened somewhere. At 3 a.m., I gave up and went downstairs for a glass of water. Standing at the sink, I noticed a faint light from Murphy's house, not from inside, but from a detached shed at the rear of his property. The structure was barely visible through the overgrown trees, but the yellow glow from its single window cut through the darkness like a jaundiced eye. I might have dismissed it, but then I heard it, the distant sound of a dog whimpering. My heart stopped. Rusty. I was across the street before I had time to think. The dew-soaked grass slapped against my pajama pants as I navigated through Murphy's yard, trying to stay quiet. As I got closer to the shed, a strange smell hit me, metallic and organic, like raw meat left too long in the sun. The bowls on the porch were filled with some dark substance I couldn't identify. I gave him a wide berth. At the shed, I pressed my ear against the weathered wood. The whimpering had stopped. I had tried to peer through the window, but it was covered with something from the inside, allowing only thin strips of light to escape. I reached for the door handle, then froze as the sound of footsteps crunched on gravel behind me. Looking for something, neighbor. Murphy stood a few feet away, his tall frame silhouetted against the distant streetlights. He was wearing rubber gloves that reached his elbows. Dark stains marked the front of his shirt. I thought I heard my dog, I stammered, suddenly very aware of how suspicious I must appear. Trespassing in the middle of the night. Your dog? He tilted his head. Haven't seen any strays around here, but if I do, I'll be sure to let you know. His voice was pleasant, almost cheerful, but something in his tone made the hair on my arms stand up. Sorry to bother you, I said, backing away slowly. I'll just head home now. No bother at all, he smiled, teeth gleaming in the darkness. Actually, since you're here, would you mind giving me a hand with something? It'll only take a minute. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I was cornered between him and the shed. I really should get back. My wife will wonder where I am. She's sound asleep, I'm sure. This won't take long. He gestured toward the shed door. After you. My throat went dry. What's in there? Just a little project I've been working on. I think you'll find it enlightening. He took a step toward me, closing the distance. That's when I heard it again. Not a whimper this time, but a chorus of soft sounds coming from inside the shed. Multiple animals, by the sound of it. All the missing pets, I whispered, the realization washing over me like ice water. They're in there, aren't they? Murphy's smile widened. Not all of them. Some have already served their purpose. What purpose? My voice cracked. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. Do you believe in transcendence, neighbor? The ability to absorb the essence of other beings? He tapped his chest. Their life force, their spirit, all of it can be transferred if you know the right methods. My mother taught me before she passed. From his pocket, he produced a small knife, its blade catching the faint light. The neighborhood pets were just practice. I've been building up to something more substantial. His eyes flicked toward my house, toward the bedroom where Lisa slept. In that moment, terror gave way to desperate clarity. I lunged forward, shoving him hard. He stumbled backward, momentarily surprised, and I seized the opportunity to run. I didn't stop until I'd reached my house, locking the door behind me and grabbing my phone to call the police. When the officers arrived 20 minutes later, they found me trembling in the kitchen. They were professional and thorough, walking over to Murphy's property with flashlights and stern expressions. I watched from my window as they knocked on his front door. No answer. We checked the shed, the officer told me later. Nothing suspicious inside, just some gardening tools and old furniture. But I heard animals. I protested. Sir, the shed was empty, and Mr. Murphy's car is gone. Neighbors say he left about an hour ago, packed suitcase in hand. They took my statement but didn't hide their skepticism. To them, I was just an overly concerned pet owner, possibly trespassing on a neighbor's property in the middle of the night. They promised to keep an eye out for Rusty and left. 3 days later, a realtor's sign appeared in Murphy's yard. He never returned. Almost a week after that night, I was raking the newly fallen autumn leaves when my shovel hit something solid in the flower bed along our fence, the border closest to Murphy's property. I knelt down and brushed away the soil. A small wooden box lay partially buried in the dirt. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. Inside, nestled on a bed of strange herbs, were dozens of pet collars and tags. In the center lay Rusty's red collar, his name tag still attached. As I stared at the grim collection, something caught my eye. A piece of paper folded at the bottom of the box. I opened it to find a note written in cramped, spidery handwriting. The preparation is complete. You're next, neighbor. Some bonds transcend distance. See you soon. That was 2 weeks ago. The police took the box as evidence, but I could tell they viewed it as a sick prank rather than a genuine threat. None of the missing pets have been found. Yesterday, Lisa mentioned that the house across the street finally sold. The new owners move in next month. This morning, I found one of those shallow bowls on our front porch, filled with that same dark, foul-smelling substance. And last night, I swear I saw light in the shed across the street. The shed that's supposed to be empty. I haven't told Lisa. I don't want to frighten her. Instead, I've installed new locks and a security system. I keep a baseball bat by the bed, but sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching at our door. Not the familiar sound of Rusty asking to be let in, but something else. Something with purpose and patience. And when I look out the window, I can see the tall figure standing in the shadows across the street, rubber gloves gleaming wetly in the moonlight, waiting for me to lower my guard. The neighbors say I've become paranoid. They don't understand why we're putting our house up for sale so suddenly. They didn't see what I saw in Murphy's eyes that night. The hunger of someone who doesn't just want to take your life, but to become it. And they don't hear what I hear every night as I'm falling asleep. The distant sound of animals whimpering, coming not from across the street anymore, but from somewhere inside our walls. Murphy may be gone, but he left something behind. Something that's getting closer every day, and I'm running out of time to escape it. The porch lights may dim, but the shadows of these 7 suburban hells stretch long. Did any particular tale make your own seemingly safe street feel less so? The true horror, often, is the realization that the monsters aren't out there, but right next door, with a final disturbing truth that shatters the illusion of peace. Which story will make you check your locks twice tonight? Confess your suburban anxieties in the comments. If these unsettling glimpses into domestic dread have resonated, subscribe to Nightmare True Horror and illuminate that like button. Until the next neighborhood watch meeting takes a terrifying turn, remember, you never truly know who lives beside you.